Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everything in between, I'm your host Isaac, and for the final time of this season, I welcome all of you to the Biweekly Breakdown. The show where I every hour of the week break down the 24 battles that's been played and compile a top 5 list out of them. Week 9 and 10 were without a doubt the most competitive and the most tense weeks of the entire season. Obviously because of playoffs coming in very close and no team actually being knocked out, and that's something I hope to commemorate in this episode. So the entries will be focused mainly on that. And speaking of the entries, as per usual, these entries are 100% subjective, so just keep that in mind. But with that boring stuff out of the way, I say we take a look at the number 5 spot on this final episode of the Biweekly Breakdown. Now starting off this week lightly, we have Scout of the Weatherballers as a first timer in this series versus Sip of G.G.K in their week 9 battle. So the first thing to point out about this battle is the importance of winning it, since at this point, since week 8, the Weatherballers are 1 and 7. They're the last placed team in the Diamond Division, but they're only 1 win behind the Swamp Squad, and with only 2 weeks left, it's extremely important that they actually pick up at least 1 win to be able to compete for that number 3 spot in the Diamond Division. So already there's a lot at stake in this battle. Now the first thing I want to point out about the battle as a whole is the hilarious fact that Sip had very few switch-ins for that fucking angry, probably Life Orb Sheer Force Tauros, struggling to keep that in check for the first 5 turns until eventually bringing it down later on during the game, but that was after his team had gotten a lot of chip from it, something that will come very important later on in the game. Towards the mid game, we just had regular chip being chucked out from both sides, rocks being set up by Scout, and shout out to Scout by the way for bringing leftovers Porygon 2 instead of the usual Eviolite, so yeah, blunder or not, good tech, I guess. But that blunder aside, the game goes from 0 to 100 within a second when at turn 42 Scout throws out her Scarf Blacephalon, presses Shadow Ball, and the rest is history because everything died. Overall, a really good performance coming out from Scout, especially since she did not draft this team but took over from Dandiam. And coming out with a win like this in week 9 was incredibly important, since that in combination with Eevee winning their battle, it meant that they got the win over G.G.K, actually being placed above Swamp Squad in the week 9 standing. So incredibly important battle and very well played by Scout. At the number 4 spot, I've put Shayquaza of Team MMB versus Cav of the Garden Guardians in their week 10 battle. This entry would definitely have been put higher if the battle actually mattered, because sadly at this point Team MMB were already out of the playoffs run. But apart from that, it was a fantastically entertaining battle, and Shayquaza bringing 4 sweepers plus sticky webs in combination with Cav's lack of hazard removal, this battle was bound to become spicy. By turn 22, Shay is down 2 to 4, but keep in mind that rocks and stick webs are up on Cav's side, which is not good at all for him. And when he switches out his Scarfed Tornadus, his Deoxys sets up 1 Nasty Plot, and that's game. His Deoxys being Nasty Plot and 4 coverage moves, and actually not having an item due to Deoxys speed not being able to hold an item this season, actually helped him out a lot, since he didn't die to Crocodile's knockoff, who actually survived a +2 energy ball, allowing his Deoxys to sweep the rest of Cav's team 2 versus 4 in a very, very nice fashion. So this entry does not only go out to this battle actually, but Shayquaza's use of this Deoxys speed as a whole throughout this season, something that should be commemorated in my opinion, since I don't think every coach could use it as well as he has this season, due to the obvious restriction where it's not able to hold any items. But I think he has used it very well this season, but sadly his team did not make it to playoffs. And at the number 3 spot, we find Strompfel of Team Swexit versus Troy of the Weatherballers in their week 10 battle. And continuing on the theme of the battle holding incredible importance from the number 5th spot on the list being Scout and her battle, this battle was no different, because at this point, week 10, Scout had actually won her battle as well, but versus Matt this time. And Troy had the chance to win the entire series for his team, potentially giving him and the team the playoff spot in the number 3 seed in the Diamond Division. So it all came down to this. But not only was the battle incredibly important, you gotta look at the coaches in this one, because it's Strompf versus Troy. Two of the best coaches in the entire league. And even though Troy's record this season might not reflect that, he's without a doubt, in my mind, one of the top 5 coaches in the entire season 4 of OWL, and that says a lot when you look at the competition. So already out of the gates, we have an incredible battle on our hands. But as you'd expect from a battle like this, the first, 30 turns were just toxic substitutes, stealth rocks and heal bells getting thrown out. It took until turn 34 for one KO to come out, but that's to be expected. But straight after this KO, however, the battle gets put in 5th gear, and Strompf starts setting up Dragon Dances on his Zygarde, predictions starts coming out, and KOs all around. And keep in mind, up to this point in the battle there had been minimal hacks, just a good, clean battle, and Troy does an amazing prediction mid-game when Strompf's Zygarde is as +1 from the Dragon Dance and hard switches into his Mega Gardevoir from the Miltank, predicting the Dragonium Z very correctly as well, and the Gardevoir tanks that +1 Dragonium Z literally like it was nothing. That very ballsy but extremely effective play brought so much weight off of Troy's Scizor, his only viable Zygarde check. But very unfortunately for him, Strompf's Zygarde goes full circle with the Scizor crits. Shoutouts to when he crit Lip Scizor back in the start of the season, and he gets the crit on Troy's Scizor too, effectively breaking his entire team. Very unfortunate setback for Troy, but he did not give up, because this is Troy we're talking about, and he kept at it. But unfortunately for Troy, that just wasn't enough, and Strompf managed to pick up the rest of the KOs with his Crobat and Piloswine, earning him the 2-0 victory over Troy. So overall, this entry doesn't go out to one coach or the other, just a fantastic battle in general. Something to be expected from when these two coaches clash. If you've been paying attention, you'd see that this is the same series as the number 4 entry from Shayquaza and his Deoxys, but from the opposite viewpoint, because at the number 2 spot we find Rattataman of the Garden Guardians versus Arctic of Team MMB in their week 10 battle. Now this entry is not like the others, because unlike them, this battle did not hold that much importance for the Garden Guardians, since they were already in playoffs since this battle was played so late, because this battle is more focused on Rat's damn Monferno. I'm not kidding, I have no idea why this had been so effective this season, because it having Eviolite, Will-O-Wisp, U-Turn and Slack Off gives it really good recovery. It's surprisingly bulky. I have no idea why it checks physical mons as well as it does, but it does, and not only that, it works as a great pivot with the U-turn, so huge props to Rat, I guess. Jesus, I never ever expected it to have this good impact, because he's brought it so many times this season, and I think it's just really cool how well it's been doing. At the number 1 spot, we have a first time for the Biweekly Breakdown, because we have a triple entry. More importantly, the series between Team Charm and N.D.M in week 10. I really could not just include one of these battles, which is why I picked all 3, because starting off, it was Tony versus Checkmate, and Tony played that so incredibly well, playing around the Mega Kangaskhan, making his debut perfectly in the end, setting up Dragon Dances after Dragon Dances with his Shedskin Scrafty, sweeping Ben's entire team 4v5, picking up the first win of this series to N.D.M. The team placed 3rd in the Pearl Division at this point, fighting for their lives to make it into playoffs. Now 2 days after this, we had the second battle being played between Jack and Rockyrolo. And N.D.M being up 1-0 at this point meant this battle meant everything for them. And the stakes were just as high for Team Charm as well, since they were fighting to become the #1 seed of the division, since they had not locked in that yet, so this was equally important to them. And both these coaches played fantastically till the end, but the thing I want to commemorate is Jack's incredible clutch decision making towards the late game. Since at turn 29, when Jack's Donphan is in versus Rocky's Azumarill, most would probably switch out into their Rotom at this point. And Rocky predicts this, going for the knockoff on the Azumarill, but I guess Jack double predicts this because he goes for the Stealth Rocks instead, an extremely vital move, since not only did the Donphan actually survive the Azumarill's liquidation, but the Stealth Rocks meant that Rocky just lost. His Mega Pinsir was below 50%, that died. Garchomp also died on entry, giving Jack the 2-0 victory in the end, making the series between these two incredible teams 1-1, so this was very, very well played by Jack. And lastly, Haz versus Alan, the deciding factor if Team Charm would be the #1 seed in their division, and if N.D.M would have to risk even getting into playoffs, since at this point they were dependent on Team N&B also losing. So at this point, everything was on the line. 10 weeks of playing came down to this battle. Both these coaches wanted to prove they were the ones on top. Haz was the first one wanted to prove this and threw in his Swords Dance Synthesis Mega Venusaur, picking up the KO of the Gliscor. So already off to a very, very strong start. The mid-game was very standard, Stealth Rocks, Toxics and whatnot being thrown out, but it's towards the late game once again where everything comes down. Turn 28, Alan is down 2-3 and he sets off a Dragon Dance on his Mega Charizard X. Something we all know is devastating and probably have been swept by a couple times. But Haz came prepared, and this came out when he chose that he's actually Habanberry Latias, surviving the +1 Dragon Claw like it was nothing, keep picking up the KO on the Charizard and the Gastrodon, picking up the win in the end for Team Charm, securing their #1 spot in the division, giving their team the automatic bypass to the semi-finals in playoffs. Now after going through all of these battles, you probably realize why I could not just have picked one battle. All of these 3 battles were incredible on their own, and not only that, when you consider that this was a very, very deciding battle, it just makes it all the better. So incredibly well played to both of these teams and all of these 6 coaches, and I look forward to seeing them in playoffs. And not only is that going to be it for this week, but that's going to be it for this season. I want to thank everyone who's been following and watching this series throughout the season. It's been a pleasure making it, and even though I haven't been the most consistent, at least I finished it this year. I want to thank all the coaches and all the spectators who made this season of OWL the best yet. And for the final time, I've been your host Isaac, and I'll see you next time.